Hi guys, I know I'm doing more videos this week than usual. It's because a lot of people have been asking me and messaging me how have I come to terms with the acceptance of not being okay all the time. How do I get to a point where I'm not angry, I'm not sad, and I'm not hurting anymore about this change in my life, about realising that I'm not okay anymore. And I thought I should do a video about it because it's a lot easier to explain in a video form than on a blog. But I just want to, you don't really become okay with not being okay. There comes a time in your depression, it depends on the different person you are, but it comes a time where you sort of accept that you're not okay, but it doesn't mean that that once you've accepted it, that it's going to be all sunshine and rainbows. It doesn't mean that now you've accepted it, it's going to get a lot easier. In fact, I think once you accept that you're mentally ill, I feel it got harder for me, because it sort of says in your mind that you've got this mental illness. You can't pass it off as something else. When you've accepted that you've got depression, anxiety and something like that, you then know that that's what you've got, whereas before you know it, you could just pass it off as, oh, I've had a few bad weeks or something. And I think accepting it is a very hard thing to do, because it means accepting that you're not the same person you were. It means saying that you're not that person you were a few weeks ago or a few years ago or a few months ago. You've done a complete change, and it's not a good change. You've sort of, maybe you were doing fine in your life, and now you're at a really low point. And you know that once you've accepted it, you're also accepting the fact that it's going to take years and years to get to a point where you're okay again. And then you've got to fight depression for the rest of your life, or, self-harm and all that. So it's accepting a whole new life for the rest of your life. And to be honest, I've come to terms with the idea that I've got many different forms of mental health. I haven't just got depression. I've got quite a few other different forms of mental health. But it doesn't mean I'm not angry. I still get very angry at the world or at me, because I've got this and I don't know why. Because to me, when it gets pointed out, they break it down into when you started getting depression. But to me, it just seemed so sudden. One minute I was this girl that was, had loads of friends, was happy, was laughing, and now I'm not. And I still get, even today, I still get very, very angry. I still scream. I go into my room and scream into my pillow, because I don't understand why it had to be me. Why me? Why did I have to suffer through it? What did I do wrong that made me get this? What mental illness? What happened to me to have to live with this mental illness for the rest of my life? What did I do so wrong? And some days I will scream, or other days I will just cry for days, because I'm upset. Because I want to be the person I was before I got all this illness. I don't want to be this person. And I think once you've accepted the fact, it does make you quite sad, because you know that your life has done a complete change and it ain't going to go back. Yeah, fine, you could get to a point in life when you can start living your life happily. But it's always going to be there. It's always going to be that, you have to deal with it. Like, for the rest of your life, you're going to have to use techniques to make sure you never fall back into that low of depression, or anxiety, grief, self-harm. And I think it's very, very difficult to come to terms with the idea that you're never going to be yourself again. You can't. I think one of the hardest things I've learned is you can't look back. I mean, you can't look back and say, I wish I want to be that girl again. Because a lot of time when I was in therapy, all I did was, when they asked, where do you want to be? What do you want to become? And all I wanted to be was who I was before. And it took a few months, maybe half a year, for me to realise in therapy that I'm not going to be that girl. I'm always going to have this hanging over my head. I'm always going to have to fight my mental illness for the rest of my life. I'm never going to go back to who I was. You've got to come to terms with the fact that you're going to become a whole new person. You can still be yourself. It's just a part of yourself is going to be new, and a part of yourself is going to have to change and going to have to deal with the fact that you've got this illness. And I think that's one of the hardest things to ever have to deal with, is coming to terms with your mental illness. And I think that once you do that, it gets quite hard at the beginning, because you then realise that you can't blame it off on anything else. But when you've come to terms with it and you know what you've got, it is happy days, good days seem to come a bit quicker and not as rare. I mean, I have good days. I wouldn't say I have very good days, but I do have good days. And on good days, I will, do stuff with my family. I will chat with my friends. I would go out. I'd go a day without crying, without thinking of self-harming. I'd go a day without completely being isolated in my own little bubble. I would start to act a bit like who I was. I would be with my family. I'd chat with my friends a lot. But I also get very, very bad days where I literally isolate myself to just me. I will lock myself away and I just hide from the rest of the world. And those days will include crying, being generally very, very upset because I don't want to be who I am now. And, I will get very angry and, punch a pillow or completely block off anybody. Those days I'll turn off my phone, I'll turn off the laptop. I don't want, and some days I will go days without my phone on because I don't want to have any outside influence. I just want to be in this miserable bubble. And I think that those are the days it's hardest to accept your mental illness, because those are the days that you've really got to fight yourself to become a better person. And I think that's one of the hardest things that a person will ever have to do, is fight yourself, your mind. I mean, when you have a physical illness, you can get, you get medications, there's treatment, there's all this, and eventually it'll go away. But mental illness is, you can give you antidepressants, but they're not a cure. They maybe, make you, not completely dark. They might just give you a bit of a boost. But the cure is your whole self. You can't, people can give you advice and tips like I'm doing, or, go to proper therapy. But the only cure is yourself. You have to fight yourself every day to not give up, to not, self-harm, to not commit suicide, to not go in this deep, dark hole that you call your life. And I think that's one of the hardest things a person has to do, is when they have to fight against themselves. And I think it takes a lot of courage and bravery to do that. And I think that when you every day when you start to fight back against yourself, it does get a tiny bit easier, because you realize, I've done, like me, I can, when I have a few good days in a row, I can go, I've done this, I've done this, and done this, and it worked. So when I have a bad day, that bad day won't be as bad, and it'll be easier to fight off the dark feelings, because I know that there are good days, and I know that I can do stuff on the good days that, you know, that so when I have a bad day, it doesn't completely consume me as much as it used to do. And I think that that's what it's gonna do. It's gonna be a long fight, and I think that people really need to understand that you know, that you are essentially fighting your own brain, because that is what's wrong with you. It's your brain that is creating all these feelings and stuff, and there's no really cure for that. The only thing that you can do is to fight yourself, and I think that's a really hard thing to do. But coming to terms with your mental illness is a very good thing to do, because it gives you then something. There's like a good and bad side of it, because when you come to terms with it, there's a good side is you know what's wrong with you then, and then you get like, well, what can I do that could help me? There's therapy, there's, you know, antidepressants, there's counselling, whereas, and then the bad side is you're now diagnosed with that illness. So now you can't play it off as like, oh, maybe I've just had a bad few weeks, or, you know, a bad that. You are classed with that illness, and it's going to stick with you. And when I found out all the mental illnesses I had, it took me a while, I'd say a few months, for me to get off the dark dip. It shook me in, because once I got told what was wrong with me, and I'd gone through loads of, you know, like psychologists and stuff, I got very depressed, because I didn't want to be classed as those things. I didn't want to have a mental illness. I wanted to be me. But then it comes a point in yourself, and I think people who have gotten to that point will understand, or people who aren't there. There is a point when you start to realise in yourself that now you know what it is, it's easier to fight. You know, you can then take the direction you think you need to go to start to fight against yourself. And there's a point inside of you that sort of makes you decide, are you going to fight it, or are you going to give in? And I think the stronger side is often, you know, just give in, you're never going to win. But then, you know, it's as long as you decide to fight, then I think that shows how courageous you are, because you're deciding to fight every day to live. And I think it's one hell of a decision to fight, because you are fighting for you're fighting for your life. Because every day, people who are definitely like suicidal, you are fighting to survive. You know, because if one day you decide not to fight, that's the day that could be the day you end your life. And I know that when I've done it, and at the one that probably would have been my last suicide attempt, I decided that day to give up. And once I'd taken the tablets, and if I hadn't found that Glee episode that sort of spoke to me internally, I would have either be dead or have serious health issues because of that. And I think, you know, that bit gave me a boost to say, you're not done yet. I'm not quite done fighting yet. And I think as long as you have a little bit of fight in you, it's worth it to keep going. And I just think that for people who are suffering from mental illnesses, you just need to know that you are very brave, you know, and you deserve to live. You deserve to know how amazing you are for fighting this illness. And I really hope that one day you'll find a little bit of happiness that could bring you to a better place. So thank you again for watching, and all the links to the Sprinkle of Courage page are all on the YouTube channel, and I will be seeing you soon. So thank you.